Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Oathcast. I, of course, am your host, Oath Alliance, and it has been a few days since the last time I made a video. It was a deconstruction of polygons on Gamergate message from their head editor, and this time it's another deconstruction video. This specific deconstruction video is a response to a article from Christ and Pop Culture. It's titled Hearts and Minds, What We Can Learn from Gamergate. So I'm going to go ahead and preface this and actually put out a disclaimer. The disclaimer is for those of you who haven't already suspected or confirmed, I am a Christian, and that people will probably assume a bunch of things. Oh no, or whatever. I don't really care what you assume. Um, I don't hate anyone. I don't want anyone to die and stuff. And, take me at my words. If you've got a question for me, I've got an ask.fm. So I'm going to go ahead and deconstruct this actually quite aggressively, mainly because as another Christian to a Christian site, they need to be speaking the truth. And I'm holding them to a higher standard because of what they profess to be. So I am going to be quite hard on them, should I find any factual errors. So this will probably be a long video. I may break it up. We'll see what happens. Anyways, I'm also going to start off by saying there seems to be two big misconceptions when I see people talking about Gamergate. This is mainly stemming from a couple of different people I've talked to about Gamergate. Number one seems to be they believe they all started out just to harass Zoe Quinn. Zoe Quinn is not very important to this entire debacle, other than the fact that her scandal was the start of this scandal. So the thing is that we don't really care about Zoe. I don't care about Zoe as a person. I don't care about her personal life. I don't care that she is having sex with 5 other people. Well, I think that's a terrible thing to do. I don't really care ultimately in the grand scheme of things. There's much more important things I need to worry about than someone else's infidelity. But people seem to think, well, Gamergate immediately started after that. No, 12 days later, 12 days from when the Zoe post was created, then 12 days later is when Adam Baldwin first tweeted a link to Burgers and Fries, the Quinspiracy, which was made by Internet Aristocrat, not to specifically attack Zoe Quinn, but to actually will go over and into the possible implications of her, specifically her sleeping with, Grayson, at Kotaku, and the possible implications of that. And that was where it was coined. It was not coined to attack her, but rather to bring awareness to this scandal in video game journalism. So it didn't start out as a hate campaign against a woman. It's probably, I would say, more a sort of an anger campaign that such a thing was going on and allowed to happen. Secondly, of all, people seem to think that because some people have trolled within Gamergate, that means Gamergate is ultimately marred and evil. As I've put forward before to people who are other Christians, it's sort of like Christianity and the Westboro Baptist Church. People look at the Westboro Baptist Church, and many Christians, I being one of them, look at them and go, these guys are whack jobs, they're nuts, they're out of their mind. If they didn't claim Christianity, they'd probably be terrorists in Islam or, being ultra radical somewhere else, doing something else. Maybe, if they were environmentalists, they'd be blowing up oil tankers and things like that, being eco terrorists. So obviously, those people are off their rockers, and I can say that quite easily. And it's sort of like saying, if you say, well, because a few bad people are in Gamergate or have done things in Gamergate's name, the entire thing's marred and you have to get rid of them. No, because it's just like Westboro Baptist Church has done some terrible things in the name of Christianity. But it doesn't mean that all Christians are like this. And as far as I know, very few people think that all Christians are like that. And the people who do are usually laughed off, because there are morons. Anyways, but so you've got these people putting a bad light. Now the problem is that who's been fear-mongering this entire thing and sensationalizing it? Oh, the media. So the media has sensationalized the, 5 or 6 trolls to seem like there's a million trolls and it's always happening. Well, you always hear the bad is always the news. You rarely hear feel-good stories about, firefighter saves kitten from tree. You always see things like cop shoots grandma, or cop runs over family dog, or scandal in the White House, because those are what sells and that's what people click on. So the thing is that beware this. What I've been saying is beware the sound of one hand clapping, which is ultimately a phrase that refers to if you are only hearing one side, it doesn't make it true. It just means that's what's being promoted. Go find the other side and find the truth, because there's always two sides to every controversy and you need to look for both. So, with all of that out of the way, I am going to go ahead and get into this. I have not read it. Well, okay. I did quickly glance over it, but I have not completely read it through. And I'm going to go ahead and bring points up. I'm not going to provide all evidence at this point. I'm going to work off of a goodwill system, in which I will take these people for their words if they say something which I cannot directly, attack, or and I expect the same thing. If I say something, I expect it to be taken at face value in a goodwill setting. If anyone wants proof from me, I can probably dig it up. It's just a lot of work to do that and put it all together in a video, and would probably make this 3 or 4 days later that will be. So I'm going to go ahead and dig into this and we'll take a look. Alright, Christ in pulp culture. Hearts and minds. What we can learn from Gamergate. Richard Clark. Alright. So, here we go. It all started with a scandal. One woman slept with other men, and one man took umbrage, posting personal chat logs with her as proof of video game, nepotism, and corruption. The result was Gamergate, a video game related witch hunt, the likes of which none of us have ever seen before. Actually, that's untrue. It's not so much a witch hunt because we're not interrogating people, have you ever been involved with, a corrupt journalistic system? Rather, we are specifically asking that these people who have been implicated, who haven't denied the implications of things, that they be either fired or reprimanded or things like that, and that publications put out an ethical revision and correct themselves. But moving on. Gamergate is an online controversy centered around both the treatment of women in video games and ethics in video games journalism. Not so much women in video games. We really don't care. I mean, the other side likes to cast that at, oh, they want, women to be sexy vixens. They want women to be Bambi, the love goddess. Oh, I couldn't care less if it's Bambi, the love goddess. I mean, most of the games I really enjoy had, either no incredibly sexualized female character or generally strong female characters. I mean, I loved The Sword of Mana, in which you got to play either as mainly a male character or a female character, and both were the main protagonists, and neither of them were sexually depicted at all. And that was an absolutely beautiful game. I absolutely loved it. So, but it's about ethics in video games journalism. That's why Gamergate exists as a hashtag. If we did not have that, it would not work the way it is. It would be a lot less people doing a lot less things. The active campaign operates primarily out of the concern that there is a general grouping in video game journalism centered around feminist and generally progressive concerns. No, it's more of this group that's become too close to the people they're reporting on, and instead of being watchdogs of an industry, they're becoming lapdogs of an industry. And that is entirely not okay. Because the entire point of the existence of a press has always been not about becoming friends and being the PR firm for a company, but rather being the intercessor between companies and people, or government and people and things like that. They report with the hopes of making aware the customer or the citizens aware of what is going on and being honest and truthful about it. However, we found that they've gone ahead and included not only blacklisting, as in the case of Destructoid, but also that they had with Game Journals Pro a uh, entire group that they could collude to do things like not run stories on Zoe Quinn when they didn't seem to have much of a problem throwing Brad, what last name starts with a W, the CEO, I believe, of Starduck, throwing him under the bus and publishing things on a sexual assault case, which actually the person who was pushing for that had out of a backroom deal, or at least as far as I know, sell out of court, in which she had to apologize for making that accusation, which would come only if she lost, or was on the losing side. And according to Brad, in his personal post on the Little Tiny Frog, I think is his personal blog, he actually went ahead and put out some things. And apparently, all of the witnesses that she had as witnesses for her side testified against her. But still, some of these places, I think Kotaku was one of them, felt fine to go ahead and publish this article that could have destroyed Brad's career. Absolutely destroyed his entire career if he wasn't the owner of the company. He would have probably been fired, and that would be it. But Zoe Quinn could not. Oh, we won't want to hurt Zoe's feelings. Feminism and progressive concerns are another story. Honestly, it's something I'm concerned about because of how it's making its way through the system, and I don't agree with the ideology. However, as long as the journalists are being honest and truthful and being objective, I couldn't care less what other people are doing. But as soon as you start pushing an ideology and you present yourself as an objective game group, not a presenter, you're not calling yourself, I mean, like Christ-centered gamer. They do game reviews and they put in their reviews, they have a normal objective score, which is what people generally see, and then they have a morality score based upon how they feel about a video game based upon morality. So they are specifically named Christ-centered gaming. So it's Christian. But if you've got a group pushing, let's say, ideological feminism, and any woman except, this perfect copy cutout of what we think would be a perfect woman, we're going to mark down the game, and you call yourself, website for every gamer or something like that, and make it seem like you're doing, or objective reviews online, something like that, then you're misleading people. You don't brand yourself as a objective or all-purpose or all-position gaming site and then just attack anyone or anything that doesn't fit an ideological position you've taken. That's not good journalism. That's actually very bad journalism because you're no longer being a journalist or a reporter. You're being an editorialist, a opinionated pusher, a blogger. Really, you're becoming a blogger, a personal interest blogger. While Gamergaters will insist that their movement is primarily about ethics and journalistic responsibility in the video game industry, that is true. That is what we've said. That's what it's always been about. That's what all Gamergate has always been about. It's the one thing that holds the entire Gamergate hashtag together. Otherwise, we would name ourselves and social justice warriors or something like that. And that would be the hashtag, and it would be smaller. We wouldn't have people coming together, feminists even coming under our flag, people like Christina Hoffman Summers coming under our flag and saying, yes, these people are in the right. We wouldn't have feminists joining our ranks. But feminists can get on board because it's about ethics in game journalism. You know, that's what it's about. That's why I'm here. That's why other people are here. That's what we've always been saying. We may say the reason why this happened is from the push of ideological feminism and cultural Marxism, but that is different than what we're trying to do. Everyone in the hashtag has their own goals. They all have their own end game where they'd like to the industry ultimately to end up. But the one thing we all agree on is that games journalism needs to be held to an ethical standard, and that many of the sites, especially the larger sites, have not been holding themselves to the ethical standards and have instead practiced unethical reporting, and that they need to change. The reality on the ground is that Gamergate is a more of a front. A front for what? A front. I'm sorry to say this. The reality of this entire Gamergate thing is ethics in game journalism. No! It's a front for what? After all, the video game industry has been talking about ethics in journalism and game development on a consistent basis for years. Congratulations. What have you guys ever done about it? Oh, nothing. You know, if consumers bring up that they have a problem with ethics in game journalism, then they're largely ignored. Actually, sorry. When reporters brought up issues in with regards to things like the fact that some of them were being paid under the table and stuff like that, they're dismissed as conspiracy nuts and things like that, and are ignored. And when the consumers speak out and get angry about things like the ending of Mass Effect 3, which I haven't yet beaten, but I don't care too much, that when they got angry and upset, they were shoved under, just thrown under the bus. Who cares about you? You're unimportant. You're just a bunch of whiny man babies, We don't need you. You'll buy the next game one way or another. It doesn't really matter. Sure, they went and revised it a little bit, but they didn't completely change it or anything. They're just like, sure, whatever. So, yes, they've talked about it, but they've never done anything. There's never been a giant push. And actually, the ethics in game journalism has generally been ignored because, first of all, the consumers, us consumers, have not spoken up against them. And secondly, game journalists have not ever really been like, hey guys, we're, being paid to review this. I mean, in the circles I run in, IGN has always been joked around as, they get paid for reviews and things like that. But even then, no one knows. There's never been definitive proof or anything like that. And, I mean, the other sites don't report on themselves. And it's not like they're being held to they don't have some sort of journalistic watchdog society or anything like that. Previous flare-ups off the top of my head include Doritos Gate, the EA Spouse Anonymous letter, the regular debates about reviews and review scores that typically flare up during the fall when the biggest, most anticipated blockbuster games are released. Yeah, but they've never really gone anywhere. I mean, these are people pretty much shooting the wind. For the most part, they're like, hey, I don't agree with that, game review score. Oh, well, I like the game. I think it's fine. Well, maybe they got paid off because I don't think it's really worth it. Oh, you're a nut. Go back to your hole, man, baby. That's generally how it is treated. The cause itself is a tool used to silence those with alternative viewpoints that don't align with those who make up the bolt of Gamergate, i.e. young males. We've got people, what's young male? I mean, I'm 21. Is that young male? We've got people probably ranging from, their probably their teens, into 60s or so, maybe higher. I've talked to and listened to a bunch of different people. I mean, we've known for years that young males are not the biggest demographic in all video games. Actually, the average gamer is what, 34, something like that, last time I heard. So it's not a bunch of young teenagers. And also, how do you know all of us are males? You know, we've got Not Your Shield, which is made up of a bunch of different minorities, including women. And women's not really a minority. I think they're slightly a minority in the world overall, but I mean, come on. Uh, but we've got women in our group. There were three GamerGate women. Well, two pro GamerGate directly pro GamerGate women, and one sort of leaning pro GamerGate woman on Huffington Post Live, and you can find it. It was the girls of GamerGate, and they were speaking out, and they were for it. So, and saying tool used to silence those with alternative viewpoints. What alternative viewpoints? If you are for corruption in video games journalism, you have no good viewpoint. That's like saying, I am for the massacre of all people other than, Aryans. I'm for the massacre of all the Jews. Oh, so you're a Nazi? Yes, I am. Or no, I'm not a Nazi. I just want all Jews dead. Well, shut up. You're a bigot. I'm sorry. We don't want to listen to you. If you honestly, if you are going to argue for corruption in game journalism, then I honestly don't want to hear from you. I mean, I'll ask you, why is that? And if you say something, it depends. If you were willing to reconcile your difference with me, by having a discussion and presenting your viewpoint and listening to my viewpoint, and are willing to uh, take time to have an objective and civil discussion, then sure. But if pretty much all you do is yell, "Oh, I'm for corruption in game journalism," na 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 na, and that's it, and then you block anyone who says I don't agree, then yeah, I'm not going to talk to you either. That's called, usually called baiting. Usually, if you're wanting to change your viewpoint, you're not going to bring in something really stupid. But it can't be a tool unless that doesn't make sense at all. How is it a tool used to silence those with alternative viewpoints? If ultimately the question is there corrupt is well, I actually said this when I first started tweeting Gamergate. The question is not, is there corruption in games journalism? The question is who and how much. Well, I think it was like where and how much. So the thing is, there's no question that is corruption in game journalism. There's no question about it. So the only alternative viewpoints you could have is some sort of defensive stance on promoting corruption in game journalism, which is a place that no honestly thoughtful person can have. You can't defend that point. You can't. It's just like defending what the Nazis did. Well, the Jews deserved it. I'm sorry. No, they didn't. There is no good position there. And if it's being used to silence those stupid viewpoints, I don't feel very bad. I first of all feel like that's a giant. It's it's absolutely wrong. But even if it isn't wrong, if the other side is literally saying we want corruption in game journalism, then I wouldn't feel bad about their viewpoint being, for the most part, stamped out. I mean, if they want to keep it to themselves, sure. But don't spread it around, because corruption is bad. The public enemies of Gamergate are sneeringly referred to as social justice warriors. No, not exactly. Corrupt journalists are the ones that we refer to. Social justice warriors, I would say, is the root of the problem. However, I would like to also call them feminist ideologues or cultural Marxists. Those are two other things. But so ultimately, social justice warriors, as it's seen through the eyes of Gamergate, are people who don't hold a specifically a social justice opinion. Those people are okay. But there are people who are actively working to force it upon society or areas of society without care for anything else. It refers to people like Anidia Sarkeesian, the media critic behind the video series Tropes vs. Women in Video Games, which uncovers various harmful ways that video games portray women. Okay, she is also the woman who literally blamed the killing spree of a guy in Seattle, I believe it was yesterday, Friday, blamed it on quote unquote toxic masculinity. Okay, she didn't blame guns. She didn't blame, you know, mental health. She blamed quote unquote toxic masculinity, which is an incredibly vague and, it's ultimately like saying the patriarchy made him do it. And there were people that was absolutely totally out of line and unacceptable because it was on the same day it happened. No time for anyone to mourn or anything. Nope, I'm going to blame all of this on toxic masculinity. So yeah, and we've already proven that she leaves out context out of things to make points. So I'm not even going to go into it. She is honestly, I would say, as a critic, she is an ultimately total failure. I may agree with her on a few points. Of course, I can agree with a lot of people on a lot of, singular 1 or 2 points. I agree with her on 1 or 2 points, but I do not agree with her tactics, with her choices, or with her as a person. And I also find her distasteful and dishonest. And that is my personal opinion on her. And no, it doesn't uncover various harmful ways that video games portray women because you're assuming it hurts them. It's not harmful. I mean, Princess Peach and Zelda are not harmful to young girls any more than He-Man and G.I. Joe are harmful to young males. Which, honestly, you're probably not going to see anyone try to argue that. Leigh Alexander, who rarely writes about feminist issues until Gamergate happened to her, of course. No, she was writing about beforehand and talking about beforehand. We already know this. It's not that hard to find out. She's also a racist. And she also enjoys destroying people's possible careers. So, calling black people hoodmen, I believe is what she used. That's not okay. I mean, honestly, that's not okay. You might as well be saying the N word. You might as well be whatever. And as much as I dislike PC stuff, you know, sorry, no. That would be like referring to Asians as squint eyes, squinties or squinty eyed. That's not okay. If you want to call them Orientals and black people, fine. You know, if you don't have to call them the PC African Americans or, Asian Americans or anything like that. But, don't refer to them as some sort of derogatory term that you made up. Because I wear hoodies also, and I'm not black. I'm wearing a jacket right now with a hood. I'm not black. But happens to be a woman writing about games. Our problem with her is because she is, let's face it, a terrible person. Not because she's a woman. She's a terrible person. I dislike people because who they are, not because what demographic they represent. And even allies, or quote-unquote white knights, like Polygon's Ben Kuchera. I'm not even going to get started into Ben Kuchera, honestly. And white knighting is not a good thing. I'm just going to say that. There's for those of you who have seen me on Twitter, I took up the mantle of quote-unquote Black Knight. Black Knight, in the reference I'm using, is sort of a contrast to the White Knight. White Knights on the internet are most notably known for coming to the defense of people, mainly quote-unquote minorities, without generally, they just, oh, someone needs help. Whew. I'm going to defend you. I'm here to protect you from the bad guys. It doesn't even matter if there's actually some sort of like actual thing going on. If the minority is not in the wrong, the person in the minority. So let's say you've got Greg over here, and Greg is saying stupid stuff. He's saying like, well, he's being another Jack Thompson. Video games make you violent. And let's say he's Native American. And so then you get White Knight Fred coming in and saying um, to you, when you say you're wrong, that's stupid, there's no proof of it, he comes in and says, "Stop attacking him! You don't get to attack minorities! I am a white knight. I am here to protect his honor. Haja, hasha." White knighting is not something recognized as good, mainly because it's usually people being stupid. They don't take time to assess the situation and actually help the side which is in the right. They just come riding in without any knowledge or care of what the situation or the context of the situation is about, and defend whatever side seems to be the poorer, sadder side. You know, just because you're poor doesn't mean you weren't robbing someone at gunpoint. And if the person, and heaven help you if the person, wrestles the gun out of your hands, and yeah, that's actually pretty good. You've got someone walking down a street late at night, and someone comes out around the corner and says, "I've got a gun," and he's got a gun in his hand, "and if you don't hand over your wallet, I'm going to shoot you." And you're really smart and actually pretty good at fighting, so you disarm him, and take the gun, aim it at him, and then this guy comes running over, tackles you because he thinks you're trying to rob him, and beats you up for it. Would be considered. That's how I view white knights on the internet. So I take up the mantle of black knight to be the counter to that, because I don't give a rip who seems to be in the right or the wrong. I defend one thing, which is truth, and anyone who gets in the way of truth is going to be steamrolled by me at some point. And that's just how I'm playing it. The perceived necessity for Gamergate became more apparent as developers and writers and quote-unquote social justice warriors began coming out of the woodwork with new things to say to an industry that has been stagnant for years. Stagnant in what way? I mean, let's face it. It was stagnant during the time that there were very few indie game companies, but let's face it, with the success of Notch and Mojang and Minecraft, there's been tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of indie game devs. There are games coming out all the time. Steam is filling up with tons of games. I literally went from a wish list of trying to make a wish list of 20 for Steam winter sales and stuff like that to be able to do their little community rewards and stuff. Now I've got a Steam wish list of like 60 some odd games. So, for maybe like 3 years ago, if we're counting at that, stagnant for years. And even then, some companies are stagnant, like Activision and Call of Duty. They're stagnant. Battlefield is kind of a stagnant thing. And anything which is just pretty much you take a game, you make a copy of it, you upgrade it a bit, you change it around a little bit, and then you put it out, and then you make pretty much a copy of that one and change it around a bit. If Battlefield Hardline had come out as it was originally shown in beta, which was pretty much Battlefield 4 with, no attack copters and, less military-esque things in it, then yes, it would have been absolutely a stagnant game. But the industry has never been completely stagnant. I mean, it's not a regrind of everything. There were still interesting games coming out and different games coming out. It is just a lot harder, but now that games can be published through a digital platform, it's a lot easier for them to do so, and so we're seeing a lot more advancements and changes coming into the gaming area. And these new voices, which we might want to point out, include a host of openly Christian writers and developers. As a Christian, I don't really care, honestly. Unless you are actually making good games and stuff like that, I don't care if you're a Christian or not. If you make a sucky game and you're a Christian dev, or writer, as a writer myself, if you're a Christian writer and you make a sucky game, I'm going to call it sucky. And if the story sucks, I'm going to say it sucks. I'm sorry, I criticize honestly. I my criticism is rarely marred by overly concern for people's feelings. So if you make a terrible game, I'm going to say it's a sucky game. However, if I feel like the game's absolutely great, then I'm going to say it's an absolutely great game. And so by adding their Christian writers and developers, what this writer is trying to do is to, because this is mainly pointed towards Christians, he's trying to create a connection. It's sort of like if you're reading this in a, let's say it was a woman's blog or something, and they mention women or something like that, a minority group in the sphere or a general minority. The entire point is to create sympathy with the plight of these people, which I couldn't give a rip about. You know, if they're pushing something that's wrong, they're wrong. I don't care if they're Christians. I don't care if they're Hindus. I don't care if they're atheists or Muslims or whatever. If you're pushing lies and untruths and, you know, misinformation and things like that, I'm going to come down hard. And actually, I expect people who are in a position, like Christians and stuff like that, people who are supposedly at a higher standard, or at least trying to follow a higher standard, you know, if they're spreading lies or something, I'm going to come down doubly hard on them, just like I am with this person, because they should know better. Began to make their way onto the scene. The carefree haze of the pre-modern gamer was disrupted. What's this pre-modern? Or, you know, we live in a postmodern society. You know, before pre-modern, were we in like what? Were we in the industrial gamer age? I remember the pre-modern gamer was often marred by making people making fun of me because I played video games or because I ultimately enjoyed video games. I was laughed at, made fun of, called names, things like that. So, what carefree haze are we talking about? Because gamers before this, you know, modern gamer area were often treated terribly. So, I'm not seeing this carefree haze at all. Suddenly, a club of satisfied gamers was confronted with the fundamental assertion of feminism and the charge to consider what their games were doing to them and what their games might mean. Games made me learn how to manage money, taught me how to work with, have empathy towards others, how to view others in a better light, and to actually realize each person is a person and they don't fall into things like groups and demographics uniformly. They taught me how to stand up for myself, how to choose to fight for what's right, how to persevere, how to be strong and courageous, how to overcome fear. Dude, I'm not. All I'm saying from what I've learned in video games, also a deep respect for females, who's because of video games, honestly, is that they've actually made me a better person. So, satisfied gamers, as a satisfied gamers, I ultimately, just looking back on it, games have been the most positive thing to me in my life. The most positive thing. Not church, not priests, not my mom, not my brother, not my father, not books, not TV, not the internet, but games. So I challenge that. And I think the fundamental assertions of third wave feminism are absolutely incorrect. And I think that the entire point of it is a guilt trip. The entire point isn't to attempt to elevate people or to get people to fight, to stand up on their own 2 feet and work towards some better goal or to better themselves. Instead, it is a fight in an attempt to disenfranchise others by claiming that certain people have privilege that they are just inherently born with, that systems of government and things like that ultimately, even though it's illegal, still practice discrimination or hate against certain demographics, and also that if you are a minority, you are ultimately oppressed and are the victim of evil. And if you want to either ignore it or want to, heaven forbid, fit into, a quote unquote stereotypical role that your community expects, like women wanting to stay home and take care of the family, men wanting to go get a job, be the breadwinner of the family. If you want that, then ultimately, you are horrid. That's what this new feminism is going for. And some of the more radical people are ultimately saying things like natural heterosexual sex is rape. Yeah. So I'm feeling like games between those two, feminism and what games have done, games are totally winning this argument. This is, after all, how art and entertainment mediums grow. Through self-awareness, through thoughtful reconsideration. Reconsideration of what? And back and forth criticism. Except Anita Sarkeesian doesn't accept criticism. She closes all comments. Any person who criticizes what she does, she either ignores or makes fun of. I mean, Christina Hoffman Summers went and pretty much made a counter thing to feminist frequency, tropes versus women in gaming, and pretty much looked at all the information during Factual Feminist and said, gamers are not sexist. And you know what Anita Sarkeesian did to that criticism? She tweeted out a video which mocked Christina Summers. She tweeted out a video that mocked her. She didn't counter criticize or anything. She just pretty much went, "Oh, look, we're making fun of her because she disagrees with me." Yeah, that's what back and forth criticism. When we criticize them, when the consumers criticize the game, the media, we're laughed at and called whiny man babies. When we criticize the developers of a game because of their choice in a game, we are called whiny man babies. When the media press criticizes something that the gaming industry does, they get heralded as watchdogs and keepers of justice, whether or not they're right or wrong. That's not fair. That's not justice. That's not even honesty. Sometimes that can get uncomfortable, contentious, and downright ugly. And it did, for years. I don't remember seeing that. I remember video games make you violent. And, video games make you violent. No, they don't make you violent. I have never actually, the more I've played video games, the less violent I've become. Because I've become more self-aware as myself. When I was younger, I was a lot more emotional, a lot more, immediately emotions would hit and everything, and that has to do with a lot of my past. But, that, the more I've played video games, the calmer I've become, the less angry I've become, the calmer and more civil I've become, the more thoughtful I've become, the more objective I've become. And so I don't see one thing wrong with video games. I mean, honestly, there's like with any medium, there are of course things that I have issues with. Um, like any other form of medium, like I can criticize one thing right now. What's with all of those Amish romance novels. I mean, come on. As a writer, what the heck? There were even Christian publishers who would not publish anything but those. If you wanted to publish a book, if it did not have to do with the Amish or a love story with the Amish, then they would not print it. I mean, come on, how stupid is that? And I can take issues with areas of all sorts of mediums. But video games, like books, are a consumer item. And ultimately, if we really want to talk about how it's an art form, then the art actually gets to reflect whatever the creator wants. Not what the viewer wants to see, but what the creator wants. So if I want to put in Princess Zelda and make you rescue her, you have no right to say that I'm doing horrible things and I should have made it for all the little girls out there. Because at that point, you're removing the fact that it's art and putting it as a consumer product, and then demanding that I cater to a demographic of consumers. Art is created by artists for themselves and then shared with the world. Products are created by the producers and sold to a demographic. That's the important thing to remember. Then it got dangerous. Women started receiving death and rape threats and began to generally fear for their lives and safeties of those around them. In addition to those who have been generally silenced. I'm actually interested in this link. Utah State University. Anita Sarkeesian threats? Really? The Polygon article on that? So ultimately, the entire USU thing was she got supposedly a death threat, which the police and apparently the FBI said it's not credible. There was death threats, and she demanded that they disallow people with concealed carries to being able to attend the event. Now, Utah State has a law which allows anyone with a concealed carry permit to, actually it's probably in the Constitution, to carry. They have the legal right, the inherent right, under state law and possibly state constitution, to do so. And therefore, they would actually have to break the law to allow that. And she got angry and pretty much said, I'm not attending. Generally been silent. She could have done a webinar, whatever. She could have showed up. And there was also never a proven connection to Gamergate. So this entire area right here is a flat out lie. This person did not fact check that. Because if he did fact check it, he would have realized that, first of all, the threats were not credible, that it was her being whiny, because they offered to have extra security and everything there. The only thing they wouldn't do is to pretty much break the law and remove people's rights. Yet she still decided her choice, not theirs, her choice was to not show up. And no proof that Gamergate, the movement, was involved. So this person has simply sensationalized this entire part right there and given out misinformation. A number of women have quit altogether. Let's see right here. Gamergate harms women. I'm going to assume it has a few women, doing it. Of course, let me ask you this. If I'm just going to put this forward. Are women scared of entering an industry because gamers exist? Because gamers have always generally held a negative connotation. So I guess the bigger question is if would Gamergate have been a big of problem if you didn't have tons of media sites going around saying these Gamergaters, these gamers, they've actually at times just simply said gamers, connected to Gamergate. So they've literally made this a giant shadow chase because no one knows who they are, where they are. They're all over the place. They're coming for you. Oh no, look out! Here they come! Ah! Type of deal. So But you're telling women that the entire industry hates women. It despises women. It wants women gone. This consumer demographic. If you wanted to go into, um, let's say nursing, and all you got told is the doctors attempt to fondle you. They sexually assault people. Their nurses are denigrated, hated upon, spit on, looked down on. Any patients you have will make fun of you, or most patients you'll have will make fun of you, ignore you, laugh at you, call you bad names and stuff like that. I doubt many women would think about going into being nurses. If you put a light, if you create an aura of hate towards a certain group, that group will gravitate away from that. And these might have been women who have faced some sort of issues, um, or not. And if it's Samantha Allen, I think it is, if that was one of the people that have there, I'm not actually going to click there and follow it. If one of them is, I believe, Samantha Allen, um, from, I think, originally Polygon, I think the place she is from. Anyways, Samantha something. She was an she was a free admitting misandrist, which isn't, and she pretty much stated it as not the cute kind of misandrist that has a fridge magnet that says throw rocks at boys because they're disgusting or something like that. So she's an admitted man hater. How would you like someone who said, "I am an admitted black hater. I hate black people," or "I hate you know Asians"? That wouldn't be okay. And actually, for a website where most of their demographics are men, at least over 50%, 60 to 80% at least, is male driven, having someone on there who is openly admitted to hating men is not someone I would put on there. That would be like, this is the National Holocaust Museum, and we're hiring an openly admitted Nazi to run this, or to write articles for it. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. You know, that won't backfire on us at all. But there's also been rather a few women who've joined because of this. And honestly, I would say it's the sensationalization. Unless you can prove that it is specifically because Gamergate has done something to a woman that she's leaving, rather than the aura created by people. So if you can link that woman A left because Gamergate did something to her or to someone she knows, and that was the direct cause of why she left, then you have a case. Otherwise, you have no case, and it's all hearsay. Stating unequivocally and rightly that video games are simply not as important as their lives. I'm willing to die on this hill. I mean, this is worth any career I have in the future of video games area. This is worth any, possibly my career as a writer. This is worth all of that. Because it's about ethics in game journalism. And if I'm not willing to fight for ethical standards in anything, what good am I? Honestly, what kind of person am I if I'm not willing to fight for that? And then Death to Brianna things, which actually this account never used the Gamergate hashtag. And it was honestly, as far as people could tell, it was specifically meant, it was someone who seemed to have a beef with Brianna Wu, not with game journalism and or even proxy game journalism, but simply had a problem with the person himself. I mean, it would be like if someone said, I hate you, Barack Obama, I want you to die, Barack Obama, I'm going to come and rape you, Barack Obama. And people said, oh, he's a Republican. And the person's a registered Democrat, and the reason why they hate Barack Obama is because Barack Obama did something stupid or terrible. There's no way. This right here is sensationalization and ultimately dishonest. Because after saying that, this leads the reader to believe this part right here is from Gamergate. But there's no proof that is. And unless this person has proof that it is, which no one else has been able to prove, then I am going to dismiss. I'm going to follow Christopher Hitchens' advice and simply say that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So this right here for me doesn't exist. And actually, instead of going on, I'm going to cut this out right here, and I'm going to come back and make this a multi-parter because it's going to take me a while, and I'm already an hour into this, barely getting through. So this is going to be a long one. Anyways, with this video, go ahead and let me know what you're thinking about this article. So far, I'm not liking it because this is absolutely dishonest and sensationalization. But let me know in the comments below. Rate this video, even if you hate it. Go ahead and subscribe if you like me as well or want to get future updates. Favorite it if you really enjoy it. And share it with people if you think they should hear the message. I will have a link to this article below. I should have all of these articles up pretty quickly. The entire article taken, deconstructed, and put out there pretty quickly. Anyways, until next time, I, of course, am Oath Alliance. This is the Oathcast, and just want all of you guys out there to stay strong and game on.